Ravi joins us now. How's the voice?
Yeah, voice is good. I mean, I'd be honest. I want to hear, given the respect I have for you, like, what did you think of the calls? And one thing I heard from a longtime engineer was, I think he heard Eduardo and Tim scream right away. And as a longtime engineer, he's like, "Yeah, no, I don't need that." And our producer, who's younger, Dan, loved that enthusiasm. He's like, "No, I was good with it." So I'm going to defer to you. Like, what did you think?
Well, I'm old school where I don't like the analyst jumping in.
Uh huh.
I'd like to still get the call, but we've found that you have a lot of these analysts, certainly locally, Ravi, that they jump in during the call like a football,
Yeah.
guys doing 80 yards and like, go, go,
Right.
go. So
Yeah.
it's hard for you to do your job when you do. I love the enthusiasm, but I think it makes it harder for you still have to say what is happening. They're
Right.
just reacting to what happened.
Yeah, you're almost so used to when an analyst talks, you lay out. You kind of okay, well, he's got something to say, but I'm in the middle of a call and they're kind of yelling and screaming. So yeah, it's one of those where you, as you know, when you sit there as a host of a show, when they talk, I'm a deferential guy. Like, okay, well, it's got to be important, so I'm gonna go ahead. Whether it's Peter Gammons, Harold Reynolds, John Kruk, or Eddie Perez, or Jimmy Dykes. That's your job. But yeah, it was interesting. But I was just curious. It was a wild game. I mean, you've certainly seen a billion wild games. That was way up there as far as bizarre set of circumstances, things turning.
Okay, but when you saw back to back with
Yeah,
Judge and Stanton,
yeah,
your thoughts of where that game was headed?
yeah. Of course. No, I look. One of the things we pointed out before their at bats was the fact that there's a 19-foot wall in left and there's a 9-foot wall in right. And given their home field of Yankee Stadium, that they know what a short porch, let alone a short wall, does. And Eduardo had brought up the point that the pitcher tends to and should keep the ball down, but in Judge's case, a down ball away, like a golf ball, he could drive it right out, which is exactly what happened. And sure, after Stanton hit the homer, given the bullpen that the Yankees have had, I thought the Yankees were ahead 3-zip, and it was going to be a morgue there tonight.
The sound, the ball leaving the bat as a play-by-play guy,
Yeah,
how much does that help you in being a little bit more ahead of what? I mean, these were no doubters. Noel's was a no doubter.
no doubt.
But,
Exactly.
I mean, Fry's was hit, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like Noel's. So just that sound, are you trained to hear that sound and you go, that's different?
A little bit. And I would say that Noel's, even relative to the games that I've done where Judge or Stanton have homered, the sound was actually different off Noel's bat. And it may have also been the trajectory of it. There was no question that his ball was a homer. Obviously, in Judge's and Stanton's case, they were more line drives, but I've seen shots off of their bats where it's not necessarily, I don't think that the sound is what's occurring to me. It is more about the sort of trajectory as it flies off their bat. You can tell that those animals who were so big, they got it and it's going to go. But Noel's was unique. It was different. It sounded different.
I maintain that I don't think any ball comes off a bat differently than it does for Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah,
There's just a sound to that. It's I don't even have to watch. I just hear and I go, oh, gone. I mean,
right.
They're no doubters.
Yeah, and I missed that. Gone. I missed that. Yeah, the two things that I took away from last night is familiarity is a problem. You're starting to see these same bullpen guys now, night in and night out, and the shine. I'm not saying it's off of a Weaver or a Holmes. Class A hasn't really been a factor in this series until last night, and it is so bizarre that he's now given up more runs in the postseason than he did in the entire season. Makes no sense at all. But my goodness, these guys are huge. They're the guys that hit balls last night that you knew were just missiles. Stanton is a football player. Judge is an absolute linebacker, tight end, and Noel is massive. So, I mean, my hands are tiny. I mean, I have the smallest hands on the planet. and I put them up to Noel's hand. I did not come up to the middle knuckle. That's how big that guy is. He is massive, and when he gets a hold of one, it goes. So it was the size, it was the power, it was home runs, it was the three true outcomes that we saw last night. But it happened so quickly.
Talking to Karl Ravech, he was on the call last night with the Yankees and the Guardians. That tricky word, momentum. Mm-hmm. Can't carry these things over with you, but we've seen where that feeling can be carried over.
Yeah.
Any sense of what to expect tonight?
No, I think that's been the beauty of this postseason. In a lot of ways, the end of the baseball season, there was some unpredictability. Teams, had bumpy stretches. Other teams got hot. Some checked out. Individuals shined. No, I don't, because, you get into this series now. And, for when we were working together at ESPN, here are a couple of names for you. So Gavin Williams is going to start for the Guardians. Gavin Williams made 7 starts at home this year. He lost all of them. Like, the last guy to do that was in 1993. You remember Anthony Young, Shea Stadium, 7 starts, lost them all. So, certainly you'd think going into this thing, BP, that's not a good omen. He also gets no run support, but he's going up against a rookie in Luis Gil. And the last Yankee rookie to win a postseason start was a guy named El Duque in 1998. So, no, I think you get into this part of the staffs, the starters, the bullpens have been used. We only had 15 pitchers last night. Maybe we can go up a little bit in this game. So, no, I don't look at it that way. I do think that part of what you leave with last night is, okay, well, Weaver had been literally invincible. I mean, his story is crazy. And Stephen Vogt, the manager of the Guardians, was a teammate, was a bullpen catcher for him. He coached him, and he looked out at Luke Weaver prior to last night and said, I don't even know who that guy is. Like, I don't recognize him. This is not the guy that I was catching with or a team. No idea who he is. But last night, he left a couple of pitches over the plate and he paid for it.
It used to be starting pitching. That we talked about starting pitching this time of the year. And I miss that. And without sounding like the get off my lawn guy, but how do we get back to where the starting pitcher does have a presence, does impact a series?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I think even over the years, while we focused on starting pitching, there were really, and I'm excluding the Braves of the 90s when they had such great depth, but for the most part, these teams, you remember 1 or 2 guys from a staff. You remember Madison Bumgarner. You remember Garrett Cole here. So they go out and add Carlos Rodon and hope it happens. But we have absolutely minimized the requirements that are made on starting pitchers. Matthew Boyd gave them 5 innings last night. That was the first guy for the Guardians in the postseason to actually throw 5 innings. And yet, if you look at their formula, if Stephen Vogt were to present you a formula, just get me 5 innings in a perfect world. And we saw him go early to the bullpen the other game, and it probably backfired. 5 innings sets us up for the rest of the guys to come in, and we're going to be fine. Until that changes, and it starts at the youth level. I see the little leaguers all the time. It's bizarre. I don't want to go too deep into the sort of pull the curtain back. But when you worked at ESPN, there was a producer named Sean Fitzgerald. He's out here working now. He's got a son that's 14 years old who just had surgery on his elbow. So all of this stuff, and this, according to Sean, wasn't because he overthrew. They were very careful. But you're still putting a tremendous amount of demands on young kids' arms. And as a result, they get hurt. And then we slowly begin to wean them off of 100 pitch outings or throwing like the Braves did in the 90s on your off day, and you throw a lot. There's obviously efforts by Major League Baseball to put an emphasis back on starting pitching, but that's one of those things, like bunting and going the other way and advancing a runner. You've got to start that at an early age. Otherwise, we're all going, Jhonkensy, Noel, and flipping bats and hitting homers.
Yeah, I was on my soapbox the other day. I said, I'll give you anybody in baseball who's throwing 100, and I'll take Greg Maddux.
Right.
And I'm going to beat you. Because there still is location, and movement. And if you have that, they'll catch up to 100. They will. Hitters will say, I can hit 100. We're fascinated by it. But if you talk to those old school guys, they're like, God, Maddox drove me crazy because, him and Glavine, guys who were pitchers. And I
Pedro.
Yes, exactly. I don't know how we get back to that other than we finally realize we're just sending these kids into having surgery. Like I don't know. You're honored. You had Tommy John. You came back. All right. You must have been throwing pretty hard now.
Yeah, no, it's like you're going into an interview and your resume as a pitcher can throw 100, has this rapid spin rate, stand 6'4", have great extension, had Tommy John surgery, check. Oh, good. So you're good for another few years. Yeah, you're right about that. I think Dan, the issue that is one of the issues is that what made Maddox so special and Glavine clearly was their consistency and their longevity. And part of that was because, and Maddox, he threw hard early on and then he became, quote unquote, a pitcher. Now there's a formula where you want to create a pitcher, but in creating a pitcher, you're teaching velocity and you're teaching this emphasis on spin rate. A great example of a guy who has come so far, but you wonder about the longevity because of how hard they throw and this incredible spin rate is a guy who was traded from the Yankees to the Padres. His name is Michael King. And when he's on the mound and he's right, the stuff he's throwing is unhittable. Like you cannot hit it and it moves everywhere. It's not 100. It can be 94. It can be 92. It sweeps, it spins, it dives, it darts. But because of the emphasis on spin, while we may have pulled back on the velocity a little bit, it's still a huge pressure point on your elbow and your shoulder. So I'm not sure that even by creating pitchers, we're in any way going to minimize the impact on pitchers' elbows.
We saw with Yamamoto last night. I mean, you want to talk about movement and filth. Like it was crazy, some of the movement that he had. I mean, it was fun to watch something like that instead of, 97, 98. This had movement on it. And I'm fascinated. I loved it.
Yeah. And that's what King does. And I will say that, what makes Weaver so special, he's not 100-mile-an-hour guy. I mean, he's a fastball change-up guy. So, you need 3 pitches, but you certainly need 2 pitches. And they both ideally come out of the same slot and they move differently. But he's not blowing guys away. Clase is that guy. Clase will come in and throw gas. And as you saw last night, it can be turned around.
He's Karl Ravech. Now, I asked this to Chris Collinsworth. And I said, do you root for the previous week of what that will mean for Sunday Night Football? And he said, yes. Any part of you rooting for Yankees-Dodgers because of maybe what that would mean nationally?
Personally, no. I'm not vested in that. I think as a fan of baseball, it would be a great theater because of the individuals involved. But I think the difference between Chris and my answer is he's going to do the game next Sunday. I'm not going to go call the World Series. So if I were to call the World Series, I'd have a different answer. I'd say, sure, I want to see Shohei. I want to see Judge. I want the superstars there. I think it's going to attract more eyeballs. But if, that my answer is I'm not vested in it. What I think I am vested in is having this series, go 7 games, be exciting. I was very worried when the Yankees hit those homers that this series is now, likely to die on the vine and how hard it is to come back from 3-0. So, as you know, in this industry and these seats, we get hammered because we root for certain teams. That couldn't be personally further from the truth. We root for the game. We root for the story. We want close competitive games. It stinks trying to fill when it's 9-1 after 2 innings. It ain't much fun. We like the close games, and we just do not care who wins. I don't.
Great job. My best to Timmy and Eduardo. Thanks for joining us, Ravi.
My pleasure, my friend. Thanks, Dan.
That's Karl Ravech. He'll be on the call later on tonight.